A French connection. President Trump hosts his first official state visit. We'll tell you who's coming and what's on the agenda. Secretary of State nominee. A Senate committee may deliver bad news for the president's pick for a cabinet post. North Korea, a major announcement about its nuclear weapons program. And isn't that sweet? Pope Francis celebrates a saint's feast day with some treats for the underprivileged. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, April 23rd, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. French President Emmanuel Macron lands in the U.S. to fanfare ahead of 2 days of tough negotiations with President Trump. This marks the Trump administration's first state visit. On the agenda, trade and nuclear disarmament. White House correspondent Mark Irons joins us for a preview. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. As we speak, the president and his French counterpart are touring Mount Vernon, the plantation home of George Washington, just outside of Washington, D.C. Macron hopes to persuade President Trump not to scrap the multinational nuclear agreement with Iran. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife arrive in Washington. On the agenda tonight, a helicopter tour of D.C. monuments and a visit to George Washington's tomb before dinner at the first American president's Mount Vernon estate. President Trump will wine and dine Macron, who pulled out all the stops for Trump's 2017 stay in France. The White House says the two nations enjoy a long and enduring relationship.
What you do have are two leaders who have a great deal of respect for one another, who have a great friendship. Certainly both have a great deal of interest in doing what is best for their country.
France and the U.S. recently joined forces in airstrikes carried out in response to the Syrian chemical attack. But Macron has shown concern with President Trump's push to remove U.S. troops from Syria, and he wants to convince President Trump to back off plans to hit France with taxes on aluminum and steel imports. Macron also opposed the president's decision to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement to fight global warming. And he defends the Iran nuclear deal, another multi-country agreement President Trump is itching to leave.
The president has been extremely clear that he thinks it's a bad deal. That certainly has not changed.
We'll see if President Macron can encourage President Trump to remain in the Iran deal. On another topic, Macron addressed French bishops earlier this month and gave a speech on the importance of Catholics engaging politically in the country. He said the link between church and state has deteriorated and said it's important that the bishops and he work to repair it. Macron is a baptized Catholic. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. 2 days before the U.S. Supreme Court considers the Trump administration's ban on travel from some countries with majority Muslim populations, demonstrators are speaking out against it.
It doesn't matter what you call it, it doesn't matter how it's written, we all know what the intent and the motivation behind it is, and it's wrong, and it's un-American, and it doesn't sort of represent the values that we want to strive for in our vision of America.
The current travel ban has been in effect since December. A decision on this case is expected by late June. A striking blow. President Trump's Secretary of State nominee faces serious opposition to his confirmation. All Democrats and one Republican on the Foreign Relations Committee will not recommend Mike Pompeo to the full Senate. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi tells us what's next. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. It's never happened before. The Senate Historian's Office says the Foreign Relations Committee has always recommended the Secretary of State nominee, but that won't matter. The Senate is still expected to confirm Pompeo, even without the committee's support.
Democrats opposing Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State say he won't make a good diplomat.
If you don't have a propensity to seek robust diplomacy, if you cannot be forthcoming, if you have no strategy on all of the critical issues that we asked you about, from North Korea to Russia to Syria, and you can't enunciate the outlines of the strategy, I think those are all reasons why it's not possible for me to vote for Mr. Pompeo.
But the committee's top Republican says they're just playing politics.
Under ordinary times, he would be confirmed overwhelmingly. Secretary Clinton had one negative vote when she came through. John Kerry had no negative votes when they came through committee. He is more qualified probably than either of them, but at least as qualified. And we just live in a very partisan environment.
During Pompeo's confirmation hearing, Democrat Cory Booker grilled the Presbyterian about his beliefs on marriage.
Senator, if I can,
yes or no, sir. Do you believe that gay sex is a perversion? Because it's what you said here.
Professor Robert George of Princeton tells me that line of questioning is reprehensible and shows Senator Booker's bias.
Because someone does not yield to secular progressive ideology on sex and marriage does not make them a bigot, but to exclude those people from public office on the grounds of their moral and religious belief makes you a bigot.
President Trump says Pompeo is a victim of obstruction. The full Senate will likely confirm Pompeo later this week. At least 3 Democrats say they'll vote yes: Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, and Joe Donnelly of Indiana. Lauren?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. Mitt Romney fails to claim enough delegates at the Utah Republican Convention. That means he will now have to win a primary in June. Romney was the GOP nominee for the White House in 2012. He lost to Barack Obama. President Trump has endorsed Romney for the seat to replace retiring Senator Orrin Hatch. World leaders are welcoming North Korea's decision to stop testing its nuclear weapons ahead of a U.S. summit. President Trump says it's a good step, but not enough. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The acting Secretary of State, John Sullivan, says the United States must keep up the diplomatic and economic pressure on until North Korea at least gives up all of their nuclear weapons. We're not there yet, but President Trump says the North Koreans are moving in the right direction. North Korean state television reporting its leader, Kim Jong-un's decision to suspend nuclear and long-range missile tests and close its nuclear test site. It comes less than a week before Kim is set to meet with South Korean President Moon Jae-in to address a decades-long standoff. As a sign of goodwill, South Korea has turned off its giant speakers near the demilitarized zone. The South Koreans regularly broadcast news and weather across the border as part of a propaganda operation. Moon Jae-in says his country is willing to work with North Korea if they, quote, walk the path of denuclearization. President Trump giving a thumbs up Sunday when asked about North Korea's decision. He also tweeted, "We are a long way from conclusion on North Korea. Maybe things will work out and maybe they won't. Only time will tell. But the work I am doing now should have been done a long time ago." Senator Todd Young of Indiana agrees with the president's push for more economic sanctions.
I think all of our leadership should be skeptical of any utterance of Kim Jong-un. But I do see a lot of jockeying between our president and those around him on one hand, and Kim Jong-un on the other before you sit down for this negotiation.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also voicing his concern to Japanese families whose loved ones have been abducted by North Korea. He says Japan will do everything it can to free those still being held. North Korea is known here at the State Department as one of the worst violators of human rights on the planet. Several Christian groups have also ranked North Korea as the most dangerous place in the world to be a follower of Jesus Christ. For example, Christians have been thrown in jail just for possessing a Bible. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. Nicaragua's president cancels changes to their Social Security system, and at least 24 people died during protests and looting. President Daniel Ortega had implemented the changes April 16th. They reduced benefits and increased taxes. But the decision led to several days of demonstrations.
Sono preoccupato per quanto sta accadendo in questi giorni in Nicaragua.
Pope Francis said Sunday he's worried about the situation in the majority Catholic country. The Holy Father joined Nicaragua's Catholic bishops in calling for an end to violence on all sides. Human Rights Court in Europe rejects the case of terminally ill toddler Alfie Evans. His parents want to take him to Rome for further treatment. The Vatican's Children's Hospital says it will admit the child, and Italy granted him citizenship. But a UK hospital is set to remove Alfie from life support. The Pope's Commission to Protect Minors from Clergy Sex Abuse is meeting for the first time since it renewed the panel. It includes survivors. The members of the commission met Pope Francis on Saturday in a private audience. Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston, who has been reconfirmed as president, met the Holy Father earlier in the week. Vatican correspondent Juliette Lindley joins us from Rome. Juliette, Pope Francis has come under fire for his handling of the sex abuse scandal, but he did recently apologize to survivors in Chile and in a few days will host those victims in the Vatican. What role will survivors play in this commission?
Well, Lauren, judging from the news that English and Welsh survivors of abuse opened this meeting, it would certainly appear that they will have a prominent position in the commission. So the Vatican press office put out a quote from one of the visitors saying that they hope they will develop a wider network of victims willing to advise and to support the ongoing work. And the survivors said that they could see that they're sharing and that having put victims first had certainly impacted the commission members.
What was the main concern by the survivors?
Well, the key topics up for discussion were the outcome of the Australian Royal Commission, which had pinpointed clergy abuse in Australia, as well as bringing into question the question of the secret of confession. Now, commissioners also discussed the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and how it's being implemented at the Vatican. And finally, they also focused, Lauren, on the role of faith communities in how they can help to overcome abuse trauma.
With that great list of things that they are working on, what are the priorities for the commission moving forward?
Certainly, Lauren, a key priority is finding ways to effectively integrate the voice of survivors into the ministry of the Catholic Church. Now, also working with survivors as an effective form of prevention, as well as education and formation of clergy members and religious around the world. And as we know, the Commission has drawn up safeguarding guidelines and norms, but they do need to be implemented globally, which is an enormous task. Now, as we know, at the end of this week, victims of Chilean clergy abuse will come to visit the Pope. A spokesperson for the Commission tells us it doesn't deal with individual cases, but they said that they are delighted that this meeting is actually taking place here at the Vatican.
A step forward. Thank you so much. Juliette Lindley, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent.
Thank you, Lauren.
We're coming up, a touching goodbye.
Mom, we look forward to being with you and Robin and all of God's children. We love you.
The Bush family honors a former First Lady and First Mother. And message of mercy. Pope Francis ordains 16 new priests and then gives them some advice. The 103-year-old nun known as the White Angel has died in France. Sister Agnes Marie earned the nickname during World War II. She treated more than 2,000 wounded Canadian soldiers. She was given the Legion of Honor, France's highest military honor. Sister Agnes is being called a great lady of our history. A Catholic priest was murdered over the weekend in Mexico. Father Juan Miguel Contreras Garcia was shot and killed while hearing confession. He was 33 years old. Father Juan Miguel is the second priest to be killed in Mexico in 5 days. And according to the Catholic Multimedia Center, almost 24 have been killed since 2012. The center says Mexico is the most dangerous country for priests in Latin America. Joining us now is Giulietta Appendini, Director for Aid to the Church in Need in Mexico. She joins us in Germany, where the group's leaders from around the world are meeting. Giulietta, why are priests in Mexico a target?
Well, because they do a very nice job in terms of the help to the people to make a war, social assistance, education, so health also. So, for the narco traffic, it's not good because it's in against of all of these crime organizations. So for that, even the journalists and priests, they are for 9th consecutive year, the first in terms of the number of the priests and journalists killed. It's terrible. The numbers are terrible, you know. So it's important to know about this situation, no?
Yes. Does the work that Catholic priests do in Mexico somehow make them more vulnerable to these violent attacks? Are they working out in the countryside? What is it?
Yes, they work. The most cities, the more complicated it's the poor. When the people is the poor people is living there, no, you know, are living there. So because they help a lot of people in this moment that you said, we had 2 priests killed the week before that. So for us, it's a very bad information. We have to make more aware in Mexico about this situation. So we have to know at the end of this, the last year, we had 130,000 people killed, not only priests, in general killed. To 28,000 people, we don't know where are they, you know, that the situation is too bad. In the period of the president, our president, we have 27 priests killed now. So it's a terrible numbers, you know.
Catholic priests are targets of not just murder, but extortion, assaults, kidnapping. Why?
Yes.
Julieta, why can't the government stop this?
Well, because I think most of the people that work with the government is involved in this situation, you know. Well, it's terrible that I'm saying, but it's the real situation. You never know if the government is the same with the violence and with the crime organized and with the narco traffic. So it's very difficult to separate the government with the crime organized, the narco traffic even, no? So you never know, because when some priest is killed, the government, the first target that they say is, the priest was part of the narco traffic, you know? Or the priest wanted to do agreement with the narco traffic, like a desperate teacher, you know? So the information is too bad about the government. So now we need to be more carefully. We need to get more information through information. Some groups like ACN, we make aware about this situation, about the Christians persecuted, about the church in need, you know. So for us, it's important to know about the priest, about the situation in Mexico, the priest killed in Mexico.
Thank you so much for joining us, Julieta Appendini, Director for the Aid to the Church in Need. It was once unthinkable that Catholics would outnumber Protestants in Northern Ireland, yet it might happen in the next 5 years. The latest census says Protestants make up 48% of the population and Catholics 45%. But more recent numbers show Catholics have the edge in every age group except for those over 60. And among school children, Catholics have a 51% majority. 1,500 people gathered Saturday to bid farewell to former First Lady Barbara Bush. Her son, Jeb, remembered his mother and his last conversation with her.
Without missing a beat, she said, "Jeb, I believe in Jesus and he is my Savior. I don't want to leave your dad, but I know I'll be in a beautiful place."
The invitation-only memorial was held at St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston. The funeral was attended by high-profile figures from across the political spectrum. Mrs. Bush was buried at the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum in College Station, Texas. A group picture from Saturday shows current First Lady Melania Trump with former presidents H.W. Bush, W. Bush, Clinton, and Obama, as well as former First Ladies Bush, Clinton, and Obama. And another photo from the funeral, the socks worn by former President George H.W. Bush. He is known for wearing bold ones, and he donned socks with books on them, a nod to his wife's main cause, literacy. Barbara Bush died last Tuesday. She was 92. Up next, hitting home. We examine the recent boom of homeschooled Catholic seminarians. And cool move. Pope Francis celebrates the feast of St. George. The wait is over. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, gave birth to a healthy baby boy today on the feast of St. George. And how she looks like that, I don't know, after just giving birth. Anyway, the palace says both mother and son are doing well. The baby is now 5th in line to the British throne. A new study finds young men who are homeschooled are more likely to enter the seminary. The Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University, or CARA, finds that 8% of young men studying for ordination to the priesthood in the U.S. report being homeschooled. Our next guest has firsthand experience. Homeschooled seminarian Sean Kerr of St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia joins us now. Welcome to the program. You were homeschooled through the 7th grade. Did homeschooling play a role in your decision to become a priest?
I think it absolutely did, Lauren. I mean, the biggest thing I would say was homeschooling provided me the opportunity to attend daily mass. That was the first thing on the schedule every day for my mom. We'd go there and I would have consistent interaction with the parish priests, serving at the altar every day. And I could tell that the mass was something my mother drew strength from to raise us and teach us at home. And so that importance kind of transferred over to me. And I kind of grew up with priests as important figures in my life.
When did you know you wanted to become a priest? I think the average age is 16.
Yeah, so I didn't really actually think about it seriously until I was a freshman in college. A priest friend of mine who was really joyful suggested to me, you know, you think God might be calling you to become a priest. And so freshman year, that question scared me, but it stuck with me. It resonated with me in a way that I didn't really understand. But so I was reading this book freshman year called Gift and Mystery by John Paul II, and in that book he describes what it's like to say Mass, making Jesus present on the altar to give to the people. And I just said to myself, you know, if this is really true, then there's nothing more important that I could do with my life. I've just been pursuing that and unpacking that experience ever since.
You moved from homeschooling to a Catholic school. Do you think you were more immersed in your faith when you were homeschooled or when you went to school?
I think both homeschooling and Catholic school provided similar environments of immersion in the faith, but I think there was a natural kind of complementarity between them. I started in the family and learned from the example of my parents and my siblings and their witness of the faith, and then there was a kind of natural transition into the wider community in Catholic school where I was able to experience the instruction and witness of my teachers and receive the encouragement of my peers. And so I think there was kind of a natural continuity between them.
Well, before we go, since 1965, the number of men entering the priesthood has continued to decline by roughly 50%. What role do you think homeschooling could play to reverse that trend?
Well, I think that homeschooling can provide an opportunity for children to see and learn from the witness of their parents. If parents can, in their teaching and their instruction of their children, really present that as an option, that they would be thrilled if a child would consider a vocation to the priesthood. That would just be such a great gift. I think that would help the trend.
Seminarian Sean Kerr of Philadelphia, thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you, Lauren.
Pope Francis ordained 16 priests in St. Peter's Basilica yesterday. The Holy Father also passed on some advice, saying they should never grow tired of being merciful. The new clergy came from several countries, including Vietnam, Myanmar, and Peru. For more on this story, including why Sunday was a meaningful day for clergy around the world, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Finally tonight, Pope Francis decides to cool it down with some gelato. The Holy Father born Jorge, or George, celebrated his patron Saint George on his feast day. So what did he do? He gave 3,000 ice creams to the homeless. The creamy concoction was served at soup kitchens and shelters all around Rome. And I asked our office in Rome, like, where's our ice cream? And they got nothing. They had nothing for us. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.